All right, everyone. What's up? Welcome in a special Friday afternoon edition of GC Live. I'm Wes Mitchell. He is Chris Clark. And there you see on the screen, very special guest today joining us. It is South Carolina's Director of Player Personnel and Recruiting, Darren Uscher. Darren, I know it's been a crazy week for everybody over there, man, especially yourself. Appreciate you taking the time today, man. How you doing?
Yeah, doing awesome. Appreciate y'all having me on. It's an honor. It's a privilege, and yeah, coming off of a strong Wednesday. Got a couple more pieces to go. Not done in high school recruiting, and then obviously the portal's hot and heavy right now, and then looking forward to our see where we're going to be playing our final game, and hopefully get that 10th win, which is something that I know our team really wants to get done heading into this next season.
Darren, first of all, man, let's back up a little bit because we got a lot of ground to cover. But
Yeah,
you are an alum, right, of South Carolina. You came back home to take this job. What has that been like? First of all, I know you've talked about this a little bit in the past, but you've had even a little bit more time since I think you spoke to the media at Birdies for Beamer early in the year.
yeah.
But how's just the transition been, and how's it been to come back and go through this season at Carolina?
A dream come true. Pretty amazing, if I'm being honest with you. I literally told Coach Beamer this after we were kind of decompressing with each other after Wednesday, after we signed everybody, and you get that relief a little bit, right? Is that I pinch myself when I walk in here, and that's not just lip service. I seriously do. And for me to sign a class and help sign a class right at my alma mater for the first time was a kind of a realistic moment that I've wanted to happen for almost 14, 15 years. And then a unique one in that too, where I came in at the middle of a recruiting cycle, which is pretty difficult, right? Because you usually have a lot of relationships already with certain guys, and you don't, or you like certain guys, right, in this role, or so it was a lot of work to catch up on. There were a lot of things to change and to improve on, but also to stay the same. So what I do think is awesome is how welcoming every single person in this building was, from the top on down. So it obviously starts with Coach Beamer. And I think in this business, we need more people in our business that are like Coach Shane Beamer, just the salt of the earth person that really cares about you as a human being, right? Before an employee or anything like that. I don't ever even feel like I'm an employee with him. He treats us all like family. So that's super important. And that kind of just trickles down to everyone else, right? The staff has been amazing, super welcoming. And then my recruiting and personnel staff that I deal with has been awesome. Again, I'm the new guy that came in, and they didn't know me at all. Maybe just hearsay. And I didn't, I wasn't the one that hired them. And here I am coming in, and they've all done a phenomenal job. And every single one of them played an integral role in us signing the class we did on Wednesday. And so I can't thank everybody enough for kind of welcoming me. It's a dream come true. And here's the coolest part about this is that we're just getting started. We really are. And I think everyone knows that. Fans know that. The country knows that. Recruits know that. Future recruits know that. Portal future prospects know that. Our team knows that. That's the most exciting part. Is yes, we're 9-3 with the potential to get a 10th win, but we're literally are just getting started, and honestly haven't even scratched the surface. So I think, in my opinion, of where we can go with this program in the future, and that's what excites me the most, is just to be a part of it.
Darren, you just hit on it a little bit, but I wanted to give you a chance to go into a couple of specifics about your staff over there. And just, I mean, I can't imagine what a day to day in a recruiting office is like right now.
Yeah,
Probably all time, like this is not anything new, but certainly with all the factors and the portal and NIL and everything, I can't really imagine what it's like. I know one of your first moves when you got to South Carolina, you promoted Brandon Middleton, you promoted Sam Sorbet, gave those kind of empowered those guys, which, you obviously could have tried to bring in some guys you knew from elsewhere, but
yeah.
you empowered those two guys. What have the two of them and then the rest of the staff over there that worked so hard and a lot of times do not get their names mentioned. What have they maybe meant to the success this cycle?
Absolutely everything. We would not have signed this class on Wednesday that we did or finished as strong as we did without the help of every single one of them. They all have unique relationships with all those prospects dating back to some even 2, 3, 4 years ago, right? Example, I mean, Xavion Hardy would not be a Gamecock if it wasn't for Brandon Middleton and the relationship that he had with him coming out of high school, right? And I know he's a junior college kid, but he had to go the junior college route, but we recruited him here out of high school. And then I will stand on the table for Sam Survey and say Demola Ajitahun would not be a Gamecock if it wasn't for Sam Survey. So, and those are the two positions that they work with. So those guys do a phenomenal job, but so does everyone else. Zach Prop works with the running backs, Trevor Tweehouse with the tight ends, and was a huge piece with Mike Tyler. I mean, Mike Tyler had been here over at camp since he's been in 8th grade. So there's been a relationship that dates back a long time there. Kwame A.G. Minta with the DBs, him and Tigray are in sync on what they want, right? He knows what to look for. He's got such a great relationship with all those guys, and him and Kendall Daniels are almost like best friends. Todd Haney works with our quarterbacks, and him and Cutter Woods go way back. Sterling Harris does a phenomenal job and works with Sterling Lucas and our edge group. So he's got such a great relationship with those 3 guys that we signed. Drew Lindler and the linebackers is a local kid, grew up here, went to River Bluff High. So kind of knows the lay of the land and is super familiar with a lot of the local talent. And then Zach Gordon, who doesn't necessarily have a position, but he's also in charge of a lot of our portal guys as well. And all those guys do a phenomenal job in the portal and have been for months now. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Jessica Jackson, who's been an absolute blessing in my life since I've been here, and someone I've even followed in the business, in the industry, being a proud alum and knowing the great job that she does and her staff. They make my job easier. I'll be honest, I get them here and I let her take over the show, man. And they knock it out of the park. And I have no reservations that when we get a kid on campus, we're going to have one of the best visits in the country, and it's going to be real. All right. We don't need a lot of fluff and all this fake stuff. It's going to be real. And to me, that goes back to our culture that Coach Beamer has set. And, finding the right guys, right? Our visits are a little bit unique, and I think they're very genuine. They're real. And we get to know the prospects, I think, on a deeper level. And I think that's why we've had success. We didn't have one kid that was committed to us flip to to another school. And I think in this day and age that we're in of NIL and things like that, and also not for the first year ever that no one's really talking about, we didn't get to have home visits in this new recruiting calendar. So to be able to not be in the living rooms of some of these prospects is hard, because that's usually when you make your final pitch or you're trying to hold off someone else coming in late. Those relationships are really what matters. And those were started by all the personnel guys I just mentioned, along with Jessica and her staff. And obviously our coaches do a phenomenal job. And then ultimately Coach Beamer is one of the hardest recruiters that I've ever seen. And he's our head coach, right? So that obviously really helps, and is super genuine with what he talks to kids and their families about. And what you see with us is what you're going to get. And ultimately, that's why I think none of these kids ended up flipping. And I'm going to be honest, there were a lot of people coming in late, just like with any school. I mean, if you have good players, people are going to try to get them. And everyone held true, and super thankful and grateful for that with everyone that we have here. But it takes a village. I know that sounds cliche, but it's the truth.
Darren, let's expand on that real quick, because I kind of got a 2-parter for you. But the first thing is, you've been at some big time programs. You've been in the SEC. You've been at Oregon. Like, you've seen big time recruiting, right?
Yeah.
How rare is it for a class to get to signing day and not lose anybody, right? While still being able to flip some guys from other schools yourselves. Wes and I have been doing this, 15 years, Wes? I couldn't give you an exact number, but to me, it seems pretty rare. Generally, you're going to have some flip from your class.
Super rare. This place is super unique. This culture is super unique. And I told people when I originally took this job or that when Coach Beamer was reaching out to me, as much as he was interviewing me, I was interviewing him a little bit as well. The last thing I wanted to do was come back to my alma mater and not be what I thought it was going to be, right? Or sour the taste in my mouth. And because, you know, I would never want that to happen and lose faith in my alma mater, right? So I was feeling him out a little bit. And he kept talking about culture and all those things. And I'm such a firm believer in that. I truly, truly am. That was kind of when I got my start at Boise State, and that's the Chris Peterson and Brian Harsin carried it out. And that's why those teams were so successful, was the culture that they created, right? And that's what Coach Beamer has done. It's really all about culture. And y'all have heard the word that we've used this year is fireproof, but fireproof is because of the culture that we have. And to me, why we're sitting at 9-3 with the opportunity to get a 10th win is because of our culture, in my opinion. And the reason why we've won some of the games that we have in the ways that we haven't given up the Missouri game, the Clemson game as being two of the biggest examples, and staying in pretty much every game that we've been in, right? And so I think that's ultimately, you know, sort of what can really carry a good team to a great team. Is the culture that's kind of instilled, and obviously that starts with Coach Beamer and carries its way on down. But we have complete buy-in. That's an awesome thing to have, and it's not like that everywhere. I promise you, it's not. It may seem like roses and everything's good on game days and on social media with some of these programs, but it's not. It's really not. And I've been at some really good ones. I've also been at some bad ones, and just because they have really good things or a cool fan base or a cool stadium doesn't mean they have necessarily a good culture. And to me, it all starts with great leadership. And that's what Coach Beamer does. You know, he's not a position coach per se. Obviously, he's a special teams guy, but I mean, his focus is on the team, you know, and the program and the culture and the people that we bring into this program, you know, whether it be Luedecke in the strength department, who do a absolute phenomenal job, him and Chip Morton. And here's the coolest part about that for me. I know that if I recruit a kid or help recruit a kid that like a Demola, right, that has the length and the size, maybe he's a little light right now, I've got no qualms or issues about that, because I know that Luedecke is going to get him ready to play. All right. And so that allows us the ability to recruit kids that have the traits that we're looking for. And I know they're going to get bigger, stronger, faster. Like, that's a given. And then here's the other piece. I think that's super underrated right now. And Luke doesn't get enough credit, and why we've out physicaled pretty much every single team we played this year. And in my opinion, that starts and ends in the weight room. And Luke does a phenomenal job, and the care factor there is just unbelievable. And then Yimi Rodriguez in our nutrition department, no one probably even knows that we have a nutritionist, but that is such a massive piece of what we do here. I have seen guys change their bodies solely because of how they're eating and what he's giving them. And that's such a massive piece of this, is the nutrition and the hydration. What you guys see on game days and what everyone sees on game days is 6 days leading up to that, right, of nutrition and hydration and strength training. So those guys do a phenomenal job. It just allows us to go out and get the right prospects, and I know that they're going to be taken care of in every other aspect.
One other one.
We got some guys joining us here. Shout out to all-world snapper Hunter Rogers, who is out there watching. Shout out to one of the guys in your class, Tayshawn Austin. He is actually a GC Live alum and a sometimes regular listener. Tayshawn will pop in.
What's up, Tay? Yeah, Tay is phenomenal. That's the other piece of this too, to your point,
right?
It is that, you know, this class has been awesome, right? They've really bonded with each other. And here's a huge piece of this. There are a lot of in-state talent. All right. And so those guys have known each other probably before we ever even offered any of them, just from being local in-state kids. And one of the first things that Coach Beamer ever asked me on my interview, I remember sitting in my apartment in Eugene, Oregon. He said, if you ended up getting this job, what are some of the things that you would do? And I said, the first thing is keep every in-state kid in the state of South Carolina at Carolina. And that goes back to when I was a student here, and our 2010 team that had the Marcus Lattimores, the Jadeveon Clowneys, the Stephon Gilmores, the Chris Cullivers, right, Devontae Hollimans of the world, all those guys. We needed to get back to that, and we needed to win the state. And I think that's massive. And then also seeing what this potential 2026 class looked like coming up with the amount of in-state talent, that was a focus and a priority for us from the jump. And not that it wasn't last year, but really, really emphasize that. You mentioned the Birdies for Beamer event. That was one of my first kind of public events. Malik Clark was the guy that committed to Florida State while we were at that event. But I don't think anyone panicked. No one wavered. We just kept chipping away. And we made Malik a priority. And that was a really focal point at a position of need for us. We needed length and speed. And that relationship won out in the end. And he was very close with a lot of the guys, and the Tayshawn Alstons, the Jaquavius Dodds of the world, right, that came to almost every single home game. And like I said, those home games for us is the biggest recruiting tool that I can possibly ever imagine. And we have the best atmosphere in the entire nation when Willie B is sold out and rocking, which it was for every game this year. I can't tell y'all enough how much that means to those kids. And when they see that atmosphere, they want to play in that. And there's what that is basically showing them a preview of what their experience is going to be like at that time next year. And you can't replicate that. You can't put a price tag on that. No NIL deal can replicate that. Like, that is what South Carolina is. It is a premier program in the SEC. It's a premier program in terms of its game day experience and game day environment in the surrounding areas, right? Gamecock Walk, the tailgating that goes on. Those guys see all of that because they have to walk or they get golf carted right from the facility over. So they get to experience all of that. That is why you come to the SEC, is to playing games like we have in that stadium across the street there at Williams-Brice Stadium, and it is unique, and it is the biggest recruiting tool that we have.
Darren, let's stick with receiver and Malik Clark. Before you got here, something that Coach Beamer talked about was how he wanted to get better in terms of recruiting and developing young talent at wide receiver. Brought you in. Mike Furry now here is the receivers coach. He was talking about Mike a little bit the other day and how he was on a mission, I think was the quote, to recruit talent. There's one more iron in the fire that you can't talk about here on the show. But when you look at this receiver class, man, looks like on paper, mission accomplished there. Can you tell us a little bit about this receiver class that y'all put together?
Yeah, I mean, and Coach was spot on. I think the first coach I talked to, other than obviously Coach Beamer, was Coach Furry. And I was still at my apartment in Eugene, and we ended up closing a couple of days after I got hired on Lex Cyrus. And we beat out Penn State for a kid in Pennsylvania. And that is no small feat, all right, because historically, those kids end up going to Penn State. And he had a great relationship with Lex, and I remember getting on the phone with him and his mom and introducing myself, and we kind of went from there and got that thing done. That was our first priority. Length and speed with Malik Clark and Jordan Gidron, and then with I don't even want to say shorter guys, but the smaller of the groups, right? In the Pup Sellers, the Brian Rose and the Lex Cyrus, every single one of them has speed. Two of those three are sub 10, 400 meter guys. They can absolutely roll. Okay. And so if you are going to take those guys that are in sort of that slot type of range, they all have longer wingspans than they are tall. All right. So they have length. They all have great hands. They have great hand-eye coordination. Here's the other unique thing about the Pup Sellers, the Brian Rose and the Lex Cyruses. Every single one of them is a kickoff and punt returner. Right. So they are going to have the ability to be punt and kick returners here. I know that's something that our special teams coach, Joe DeCamillis, is super fired up about. We're looking for someone that's going to replace Juju back there in that return role. We can get, those guys, when they get rolling, man, no one touches them. And I think all of them are super dynamic with the ball in their hand. A lot of them, they're also able to be utilized in some fly sweeps and motions, and a lot of the stuff that Coach Loggins wants to do with this offense. These dudes are weapons. And then Malik Clark, he's one of the twitchier, prospects off the ball that I've evaluated in a long time with his length and his athleticism. And then a guy that kind of I obviously was on early. We all were on early, but thought he was a class of 2026 prospect in Jordan Gidron that we had circled as literally one of the top priorities in 26. We did some digging a little bit and found out that he was able to graduate early, sort of pitched that idea to him and his family. His parents are just phenomenal human beings. We got him over here, sat down with them, pitched the idea, not in a pressure way, but just in a way in which I wanted them to have all the information so they could make the best informed decision for their family, knowing what we needed and knowing that Jordan has the ability to come in here and compete for a starting spot right away. And he has all the talent in the world to be one of the better receivers that we've had here at Carolina. He has that length. He has the speed. He's a 10-4 guy. He's a track guy, runs the 100 and the 200, a relay guy, state champion relay guy, right? So the speed is there. He also has great ability to adjust to the ball in the air, track balls. His hand-eye coordination is phenomenal. And then here's the thing about every single one of those guys. They're phenomenal kids, right? I don't want that to get lost in all this. Yes, the traits and the athleticism and the ability and as football players is awesome, but they're all great people. And that's what Coach Beamer has done a phenomenal job of, even me prior to getting here, is taking the right ones, right? Taking the right ones. Yes, there's a lot of talent there, but they're also great kids. And think about this. Jordan, I had never heard this till I came here. Jordan Gidron is above a 4.0 student, but in order to reclassify early from 26 to 25, he's also an early enrollee. Okay. So basically he's graduating a year and a half earlier, right? So for him to be able to set himself up to do that is phenomenal. It shows his work ethic and his drive, right, to be great. So we're basically getting a 16-year-old receiver, right, that runs a 10-4, that is a 4.0 student that's going to be here in our program in a month, right? So you're talking about, we haven't even scratched the surface of where I think we can go offensively, and then get him with Mike Furry, who's played the position at the highest level and is one of the most detail oriented, has gotten our receiver group this year so much better. I know that y'all have seen from when we first played that first game to where we are now, and developing and continue to develop that room. Watch out, because I think we've given Dal Loggins and the O staff a lot of weapons and a lot of weapons for 16. And he will no doubt be in the Heisman conversation this time next year. I believe that. And I'll be honest, I'd be remiss if I didn't sit here and say he deserves some votes right now.
Yeah, for sure, Darren. And I'm looking forward to seeing all those guys, man, that were playing this year that come back. What do they look like, in 6 months, 8 months, when you start talking about starting out next year, and then just the influx of competition y'all are going to have with the guys that are coming in from this class. Going to be fun to watch. And hey, let's go into the trenches here for a moment. And obviously, I thought that was kind of the trend of the day on Wednesday when you look at several of the guys y'all flipped or added, adding a Christian Ingram. But you talked about Xavier Hardy earlier today. I mean, talk about a long time coming in that recruitment, man. I went back and looked. South Carolina, this is obviously before you got to Columbia, but 2021 was the first time South Carolina offered that kid. So talk about just like staying the course with the guy. He commits to Mississippi State this time around. Y'all stay the course with him. And obviously, Darren, you look at what's leaving from that D-line on the interior this year, some need for some guys to come in. But you look at Zay, like this is an SEC dude on the interior. What do you just see from him from like an eval standpoint?
Yeah, so actually my relationship with Zay goes back to when I was at Auburn. We offered him, and he came up a couple of times. So I was already familiar with him. Here's the thing about Zay. He's your prototypical plug-and-play SEC defensive lineman. And then I don't know if y'all saw his basketball highlights sort of floating around from high school on social media the other day, but he's super athletic, and he reminds us a lot of, like, TJ is that athletic in the way he moves his body, but Zay is bigger. And I'm not saying he's going to be TJ, because TJ is phenomenal, but he's a guy that will plug into that boogie range, that Tonka range, that TJ, and play that position for us. And in my in my other wall here. I'm not gonna show it to y'all, but I have our whole team, right? And I have it all by class, just so I always like to think 2 or 3 years ahead in my mind. Well, the seniors are yellow tags, right? There's a lot of yellow in that D line, and I want to see that every day to remind myself and everyone that comes in here, we need to replace those guys, right? So that was the priority when I got in here, and obviously it was for them previously to me getting here. So the day when he committed to Mississippi State, it was just like another day for us. We just treated like nothing changed and kept recruiting him exactly the same, just as hard as we always were. And I think that relationship with T-Rob, who does a phenomenal job in recruiting because he played the position at the highest level in the SEC here. He's an alum, so he knows what this place did for him and his family. And he played in the NFL, right? And the passion that he brings to the game from a coaching perspective and a recruiting perspective, it's hard to see why someone wouldn't want to come play for him. So he played a massive role in that. And just that constant communication we had with Zay and his mom, and he's in Macon, Georgia, and the proximity to home, and she being able to come see her baby play a lot easier than it is in the other place he was committed to, and just harping on the right things, and obviously us getting Zay back here, I think was really what sealed the deal. For I believe it was the A&M game or the Missouri game. I get both those mixed up sometimes because they're both crazy from an atmosphere standpoint. But just sitting down with him and just really, he brought some of his people up with him and that were close to him, and they just felt the love and the consistency all along, and then the opportunity to play at a high level. And what we did in the D-line, I mean, we have arguably one of the best, if not the best D-line in the country, and to be able to sell in a way that you can come in and immediately play. Obviously nothing's guaranteed, but the opportunity is there, right? Was really important to Zay.
Darren, when you look ahead, you mentioned the atmospheres, right, of Missouri and A&M and relationships, right? So a lot of 2026, a lot of 2027 prospects visited for those games. There's a lot of guys from the 2026 class that have already been to South Carolina, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times.
Yeah.
And obviously you guys are off to a good start with verbal commitments in that class. You can't talk about any of them, as a reminder to everybody listening, but off to a good start, and seems like there's some momentum in that class too. Can you kind of give us a broad overview of how you think things are going for the 26 class so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going about as good as you wanted them to. That's again, like I said, the focus there was starting here and work in the state of South Carolina and then working our way out. Obviously there's some other guys that obviously, like you said, I can't mention them by name. They know who they are, but they're a big piece of this class. They're vocal. They've been established as leaders from the beginning. I know a lot of them already have group chats. There are some prospects that are verbally Carolina already over 15 times unofficially, right? So the more we can get them on campus, the better. I think if you asked any of those guys, that they would probably tell you that it doesn't even feel like a recruiting visit anymore. It's just like we're just hanging out with them. They just are very familiar with us. They're comfortable with us. They just come to hang out. That's the way we want it, and because that's how this program is sort of run anyways. It's a very family-oriented atmosphere here. They feel comfortable with us. Their families feel comfortable with us. The sky's the limit for that group there. We've got some really good pieces in place now, and I will say this, definitely there's some guys in that class and targets that are playing in some meaningful games tonight and tomorrow. Definitely want to give those guys a shout out in some of the semifinals and then even some state championship games. I know what it's like to win a state championship because we just won one last Saturday versus Clemson. So we're state champs, right? So I want all those guys to go out there and be successful. The other thing is a lot of those guys come from winning programs. And so we love recruiting winners, right? And the core value in this program is compete. And those guys come from really, really good high school programs within the state. So did a lot of our guys in 25. And that mentality is something that's hard to teach, right? Winning is hard to teach. It's something that you either kind of have or you don't. So when they get here, they're a lot more inclined to buy in a lot faster. And it's almost like they're already coming from some college programs, the way that some of these kids and the programs that they come from operate. So I think we're just scratching the surface of where we can go in 2026 based on the atmosphere that they've seen and those guys wanting to play in it. I mean, some of these guys are just itching to get here. And, the trend now is to graduate early and reclassify and all these things. And, all of them want to and think that they can. So they can't, but they always ask me to look and see what I can do and see if they're able to. And we look through it with our compliance people and all that. But that just shows you how much they want to be here, right? And the momentum that we have right now isn't even scratching the surface of where I think we can go. And people see that. And like I said, don't downplay ever what your impact can be as a fan or someone that comes in that stadium, because that atmosphere, like I said, is honestly our biggest recruiting tool that we have. And those 26s, if that was their first, some of them that are committed to us now, their first South Carolina football game was one of those home games this year. And, that propelled them into almost like solidifying their commitment in a way, like, holy smokes, that's what it's going to be like when I play here. Like, I knew it was cool on TV, but now they see it as a commit. They're out there on the field, right? They're on the logo, shaking Coach Beamer's hand. They're taking it all in. You can't put a price tag on that.
Darren, let's go back into a couple of the position groups in this class. And I'll tell you, one of the more intriguing groups for me is kind of this linebacker class, man. Like, you start to look at it. Some guys in there that aren't quite as highly recruited from like the people on my and Chris's end, but then you start to dive into them. Very just like a trait C class, it seems like just athletes across the board. Much like kind of y'all's linebacker depth chart on the team this year. I feel like there's some guys with some different skill sets that can slot some different ways. Maybe some guys that can go rush the passer, like maybe even some question like, hey, is this guy going to be more of an edge guy? Is this guy going to be a true linebacker? Jaquel Holman's a guy you look at and you're like, man, he rushed for like 1,000 yards as a running back his junior year. So can you maybe take us through? I mean, Donovan Darden, I saw that kid in person. I'm like, Chris and I talk about this. He looks like a junior in college or something. So, Darden, we talked about Tay Austin a little bit.
Sure.
Jaquel. Dude, you want to just kind of tackle that group as a whole? AJ Holloman, Josh Smith.
Yeah. So the thing there, obviously, a lot of those guys were committed when I got here, but Coach White does a phenomenal job of attacking what he wants. And what we really wanted was the traits, like you said. We wanted length and speed at the linebacker position to where our defense is, where you kind of saw us play defense this year, to where we had the D night. And really when Bam came in, that made us a little bit more athletic and able to tackle in space on some of these RPO teams that you're seeing a lot more now. The true, like, Mike, as I call them, just the guy that just sits in the middle. Not that those are bad players by any means. That's really getting phased out a little bit. So you're wanting these guys that are just athletes, or they're either converted safeties or they're like edges that are playing Sam, right, with length on the edge, that can still set an edge in the SEC, but technically aren't edges, right? So just length, speed, athleticism. That was the target in this class. You look at all those guys and they all have that. And then here's the other thing, that all of their work ethics are extremely high. And then from a weight perspective, they have the length. Some of them might be a little light right now, but like I said in the program earlier, we don't even look at that, because I know that they're going to get in the weight room with Coach Day, and he's going to put the weight on them, and they're going to end up looking like freaks. All right. And they're going to end up doing what we want and looking kind of like what we want. And I think when you look at Demetrius Knight, that's kind of the prototypical linebacker for South Carolina. I mean, he's 240 pounds. I don't think people realize that. And the way he runs over 22, 23 miles an hour. So that's really what we want those guys to all kind of end up looking like. And then a guy that we got on late, because he was in our backyard. I had to ask the question why we weren't kind of on him. And maybe this program previously hadn't signed a kid from Dutch Fork in a long time, but the tape with Josh Smith was kind of undeniable. And, his junior year, he was playing on the edge. So we just wanted to see if he could move in space. We got to see that his senior year, and a huge emphasis for me. And I know with Coach Beamer is we're not just going to stop recruiting after junior film. I really want to see senior film. I think that can tell a lot. I want to see senior film, and even if you're committed to us too, because I don't want to take a guy that, sort of has a downgrade or a bad year after they've committed somewhere and just kind of packed it in. I think that tells a lot about the player and the person there. All these guys had great senior seasons. A lot of them went like this. I don't think there's any player that we signed on Wednesday that you saw going like this or sort of tapering off in any way. Josh Smith made some plays that literally, I know they're still going, but that made their season, put them in position to be where they're at now. That dude takes over ball games, and when you meet him in person, he's a thick, rocked up dude. I think he can really sort of almost fill into the role that Debo had here, and sort of be that next sort of Debo, but be a local homegrown guy. And then his attitude is through the roof in terms of his character and his work ethic. And you ask any person at Dutch Fork High School about Josh Smith, and they have just such amazing things to say. And he's somebody that we just couldn't let leave and go to another program. And we needed him in our program because he makes us better. And I can see him being a fan favorite here for years to come. And again, like I said earlier, he comes from a really, really successful program. All right. So his mindset is different. He's a winner. And I think, again, you can't put a price tag on that. That group as a whole is going to have the opportunity to do some special things here. Hopefully we look back on this in a couple of years and say, that was the linebacker core that, helped us achieve our goals. And then we'll supplement with the portal as well. Obviously we're losing, 3 really good linebackers in Demetrius Knight, Bam Martin, Scott, and Debo. So we're going to have to replace those guys, but we also want to develop young talent as well.
Darren, let's go there since you mentioned the portal, right? Linebacker, you're going to be looking in the transfer portal, defensive line, certainly other positions. How do you put together the portal strategy, right? Because, a lot of times fans are looking at, prospect A from this big time school is in the portal. Got to go get him, right?
Yeah.
And Coach Beamer's talked about this a lot. There are some players that may fit that profile as well, but also you've got D Knight from Charlotte. You've got Kyle Kennard was pretty highly recruited out of the portal, but not this huge name. And last I checked, he was one of the best defensive ends in the country. So how do you put together, A, the overall strategy of what you need in the portal, and then B, how do you go about evaluating and attacking when you're having to do this pretty quickly, right? It's a pretty quick turnaround with portal recruiting. Yeah.
So I think the first thing is none of us here care about the previous school that you were at in terms of it, if it's from a big time program or a blue blood, so to quote unquote speak, or what you were rated coming out of high school, or if you were rated in the transfer portal. None of that matters. Honestly, I think that's more so for fans to talk about. I don't really look at any of that. Don't really care what it says on the front of your jersey or the logo on your helmet where you're playing. If you can play ball, you can play ball. All right, that's where it starts. All right, we obviously have to do a great job evaluating them. And then here's the really important thing, and I think there's an emphasis around the country of to just bring in guys that were heavily recruited, or if you recruited them elsewhere and things like that. You need to get to know them, and you need to find out what they're about and see if they're a fit here. Right. So those portal visits will be big for us. I think we need to be able to choose the right ones. And I'll be honest, we're having our pick of the litter a little bit right now, as opposed to it's been different in the years past. We're 9-3. We're having to turn guys away. All right. And there's guys that we've already turned away. All right. That may be some big name type of guys, but we're doing our research on them. We're calling everyone that we know, their high school coaches, all right, guys at their previous school, maybe a counterpart in my position at a previous school, things like that, right? And we're finding that information out before we even bring them on campus. And then when we bring them on campus, it's almost going to be like an interview. And it's not going to be some glitz glammy official visit like it is in high school. And if you're wanting a photo shoot and $100 steak dinner, ribeye, all those types of things, and to do all this glitzy, glammy stuff, this probably isn't the right place for you. It's almost becoming like a free agent visit in the NFL where you go there to see if you fit and if it's a mutual match. I would love for our coaches to get these guys on the board, see how much football they know, and then for all of us to get around them. And then we'll go in there in our staff room and we'll all go around the table and see if we like them, the kid, and if we had any issues with them. And if we have issues with them, we let them go. And I think it's more about choosing the right guys, and you can't worry about the ones you don't get. And so we have the ability to be picky and to be choosy, and we will. In terms of how that starts, I won't go into all specifics and give away our trade secrets here, a little bit of the secret sauce, but that process has started probably before the season started. Obviously, you don't know who's going to enter the portal. So what you need to do is scour the country for guys, and that keep running lists of players that are playing well around the country. And so when the time comes that they do enter the portal, you already kind of have that evaluation from a football standpoint done. And then it's getting in communication with them and then getting them up here and finding about them as a person. So our team back there in the personnel department, the names I listed earlier, each have a position. They're monitoring. Not that PFF is everything, but it's just a tool to help you make a decision, right? It gives grades every week, and maybe it's just a name that, we know we need a guard or a receiver, so we're going to watch the best PFF receivers from that week, or we just played a certain school and this guy went off on us. Well, let's put him on our list. Hey, maybe that guy ends up entering the portal. That way we don't have to waste time evaluating him. My department's evaluated him. I've evaluated him. The position coaches evaluated him. Coordinators evaluated him. Then ultimately, Coach Beamer will evaluate him. And so we're not waiting to make decisions. We're just kind of sitting on G, waiting on O, and we're ready to get them up here. And we've already kind of made a decision from a talent standpoint where they can fit in. It's really just, all right, we're pressing go. Let's get them up here, and then we're rolling.
Yeah, Darren, I'm amazed how many guys basically go in the portal and they're cramming what out of high school was like a 1, 2, 3 year process. And like I heard a story of a guy this week who basically he's got like 4 schools and he's going to go to 4 schools in 1 week. So it's like for the player, it's all crammed in. And for you guys as well, making those decisions, like knowing, hey, are we moving on this guy? Are we not? You don't want to miss on player B because you wasted time on player A. And so I imagine all that kind of groundwork, that foundational evaluation work is going to be huge for you guys moving forward. This kind of 3-week just sprint is what it will probably be for you all. And kind of somewhat related to all that, man, how important is the retention aspect of your current roster? Like you're always going to have some needs when guys graduate, but to retain the guys that are kind of the fabric of this current team that do have eligibility left and aren't going to the NFL, and then to where you don't kind of have that surprise spot where you say, well, dadgum, now we got to go fill another spot in the portal because we just lost a guy. What's just your take on retention in our current college football landscape?
Yeah, I think that's been the hardest piece that no one's talking about. And if you surveyed 15 of my counterparts in my position across the country, they would tell you the same thing. Because no one really wants to talk about it. You're in the middle of a season. But if you haven't started those conversations before in the middle of the season, it's not going to go so well for you. So we started a lot of our retention talks in the beginning of our first bye week. We obviously had 2 bye weeks, which is unique this year. So you sit down and have some conversations where you think things are with some certain guys. You have a little bit better of an idea after the second bye week, and you intensify some of those conversations. And then by the time that it gets to the end of the season, you're feeling pretty good about your roster and where they're at. And that way you can go fill and supplement your needs. I think if you have to rely on the portal, as y'all have seen, it hasn't worked out so well for a lot of teams that have tried to do that, especially this year. I'm not talking negative about anyone else. That's just not Coach Beamer's philosophy. That's not our philosophy here. I think the portal is a tool to supplement your roster and to get better. And then the high school recruiting piece is really where you want your foundation. And you go supplement with the portal, right? You develop the young guys that you have. All right, you look at a Demola Ajitahoon and a Shed Surratt that we signed. We signed 2 guys that hopefully are going to be developmental guys that we're going to develop. We're going to supplement with the portal. And then hopefully in a year or two, those high school guys get developed and they're the starters. And then you're just kind of building after that. If you have to rely on your whole roster from the portal, I don't think, one, it's good for your culture. Okay. And I think here, like we've been saying, I've said that word so many times because I'm a firm believer in it. We have such a strong culture. And then two, you just want to try to develop guys and really just supplement with the portal. I think retaining our current rosters is the most important thing. It starts there, right? It starts there. You're recruiting high school, right? But by the middle of the season, you're really trying to retain your roster for what you have coming up, and forecasting who's going to maybe leave for the NFL, and things like that, right? And so I think this place did a phenomenal job of that last year. And obviously I wasn't here, but I think that's why we're in the position that we're in now, because the Boogie Huntleys of the world stayed, right? The Tonka Hemingways of the world stayed. The Nick Emanwaris of the world stayed. Those guys stayed. And so you had your core in place, right? Guys that believe in the program. Then they were able to go out and get some major pieces in the Kyle Kennards, like you just said, right? The Rocket Sanders of the world. So you supplemented, right, with the right portal guys because they were the right people that fit the program. And they were really talented, obviously off the field or on the field. And then they were really good people and they came in. So retaining your roster is really where it starts, because then it shows you what you need to get in order to take that next step. So obviously we're losing O linemen, right? We're graduating O linemen and D linemen. So our whole focus was retaining the guys that we have, so we don't have to go sign 7 D linemen and 8 O linemen, stuff like that. You never want to sign that many guys in a class in high school, let alone in the portal. Not to mention that gets super expensive and things like that. So it's a fine balance. It's ever evolving in today's landscape. Almost every single one of our current players has agents, right, that handle this stuff for them. It's become more like the NFL in that regard than anything. So that's been my focus while doing high school recruiting and while evaling portal guys. It's really been taking care of our team because they're the ones that are here and they're the ones that are working hard, and we want to be able to reward them. And I will tell you all this right now. We are in such a phenomenal position in terms of the resources that we have in place to help take care of guys through the Garnet Trust, and the support from the university that we get is extremely high. And I probably work and deal with Jeremy Smith, who runs our Garnet Trust, our NIL collective, more than anybody in this building. I'm on the phone with him more than anyone because we're on the same page with everything. And so is Coach Beamer. There's nothing that goes on from that aspect that he doesn't know about, nor do the coaches. Everyone's on the same page. I think that's the key to success. It's key to culture. Everyone's in alignment, from our university on down to our athletic department, on down to the football program. So we really have a good thing going. That's how you retain guys is with trust, honesty, and then being able to take care of them. But, compensating them for their value and so forth, and wanting to be a part of this program. And because I think, like I said in the beginning, I think we're just getting started and the sky's kind of the limit for this program.
I think you read my mind, Darren, because I was going to ask you about NIL next. So a couple things there, if you could just expand a little bit. Number one, you mentioned Carolina being in a much better place than it was, maybe last year, maybe 2 years ago, which I agree with. Just how important is it to be able to have those NIL resources to recruit instead of not having them or not having as good a resources? How much of a difference, does that make? And then secondly, how do you avoid going the route of, for lack of a better term, better phrasing, buying a team, right? Being able to kind of merge, hey, we understand that guys in 2024 require NIL compensation, but we want to also keep a culture in our building, in our program.
It is of the utmost importance. And I think to ignore that is to not evolve, right? I live kind of by the saying innovate or die mentality. Agree or disagree with it, it's here, right? It's here. I know y'all listened to our new athletic director sort of speak yesterday. That's why we're also excited about him, because he embodies that same philosophy on that. Just because some people might think that they shouldn't earn this or shouldn't earn that, someone will give it to them, right? So we are as competitive as anybody in the entire country with that, and we will continue to be, and we will continue to be aggressive with it. All right. That's where the conversation starts, right? Was with that. Now everything else supplements around it. I wouldn't say it starts there, but like if someone asks us that, we have it, and they know that we have it. So we're good on that. It is super important, because if you don't have that, kids will not consider you these days, whether you like that or not. You kind of have to get that out of your head, that that's just what they're going to ask now. I would say 4 or 5 years ago, when it just started, it used to kind of rub you the wrong way. Is this kid only asking about that? And say, he's probably not the right fit for us. These are some of the best kids and phenomenal people and families, but they're going to ask it because they should, because that's the rule in place now. They can, right? So we have it. We're not going to shy away from it. We're going to be aggressive about it. We're going to use it to our advantage. But at the same time, all right, there's a fine line as well in discussing those sort of things and not getting out of whack. All right, we still have 104 other people to take care of on our roster, 84 other guys on scholarships that we need to take care of. So being cognizant of that and knowing what your numbers are. And I like to tell people that 5 years ago, I never thought I would use Excel and formulas as much as I do for accounting. But those classes that I took here at Carolina are paying off. I was a business minor, so that's helping a little bit, along with my sport management degree. So just you can't get your numbers out of whack, right? And you can't invest too much in one position, and then next thing you know, you look up and you have no DBs, right? If you invest all in your linebackers, I'm just throwing out hypotheticals, right? So being very cognizant of that, everyone being aware of it. I think it's very important information for our position coaches to know what their room is like, right? It's not like that at every place. And it necessarily wasn't even like that sort of before. I think the more transparent that we can be with ourselves, with our staff, and then with the prospects that we're recruiting, the more believable that we are as a staff, because it's what is the truth in a realm in which there's a lot of mistruth out there right now, right? There's a lot of this, okay? There's a lot of false promises being thrown out there. When you come to a visit at Carolina, we're going to show you that what we're going to tell you is what we're going to do, and you're gonna believe us, because you're gonna feel that. You're gonna see it. We're gonna be able to follow through on everything we talk to you about. But if we didn't have that, Chris, we wouldn't even be in the conversation anymore. We really wouldn't. And Tuesday night, right, is always when I say this is a term that Brian Harsin, the former coach at Boise State and Auburn, myself coined years ago. Shenanigans happen. And that's when people come in late. And back in the day, they used to just call people and see if they'd flip. Well, now people are calling and offering things, right, in NIL, right? And it can get pretty crazy. So that's a factor, right? And that's an ability that allows us to be able to retain every single kid that was committed to us, and we didn't lose one kid on signing day, like we talked about earlier. So all of those things are a huge factor. And if I think we didn't have that, I'm not saying we wouldn't have signed a good class at all by any means, but we're up there with the big boys now, and we can compete with anybody in the country. And that's not going to be, let me say this, it's not going to be a reason why someone doesn't choose to come here.
Darren, let's close it out right there with one final thought on signing day. Not only do you guys retain everybody that was committed, which I got to imagine that's just kind of just a crazy feeling when you wake up on signing day of like excitement, but a little bit of butterflies. Like you just want to make sure the day goes smooth because you guys have worked so hard leading up to that day. But to cap it off with Damola Jidahun at the end, which for the guys like us on the outside, like that was one of your true kind of signing day surprises. Like a lot of times this stuff is kind of floating out there a little bit. Like there's little hints of it. For Demola, it was kind of a true signing day surprise flip for you guys. What can you tell us about just the behind the scenes on when you guys found out, kind of, as much as you're willing to share, just the excitement level for when it happened and kind of how it went down?
Yeah. That one was a battle every day for the last month. I think it probably changed 5-6 times a day. Seriously, back and forth. I do want to give major credit to Sam Survey and Coach Teasley on that one. They worked their rear ends off. Again, relationships were super important in that one. A lot of the things that, again, I'll go back to that happen with schools making a lot of false promises, right? That was a case, I believe, here with that particular school. No need to mention them by name. I think everyone kind of knows that, and didn't come through with some things that they were going to do. And all we had to do was continue to be who we were, right? And get them to believe that what they were going to do was not, they weren't operating in good faith. And that's not the only reason, but, after back and forth a little bit, and they got the last visit too. That's the other thing here. Like, again, we obviously played at Clemson. So we didn't get to have recruits on our campus. And then it went dead that that Monday. Right. So this individual, Demola, was at another school that last weekend. And in those in-person meetings are hard. It's hard to say no face to face, right? And things like that. So we literally just had to get his mind flipped around to know that kind of what they were saying might not have been the complete truth. And then I think Sam doing a phenomenal job of staying on top of it. We had the coaches at Duluth High School in our corner. That stuff matters a ton. That's why relationships and the way you treat people matter a ton. Whether they have a prospect or not, you never know when those relationships are going to, you're going to need those relationships to fall back on. And I think we did such a good job of his circle, whether that be his family, his friends, his high school coaches, in order to win out on signing day. And we didn't actually find out until about 1:30 on signing day that he was going to commit to us. We ran and brought the phone into Coach Beamer's office, and we actually didn't even have the paperwork signed by his press conference. So that's why he was unable to talk about him. He was telling me to run into the press conference, or me or Jessica, if we got it. We didn't get it. So you're obviously naturally freaked out a little bit always with that sort of stuff. We ended up getting it, as y'all saw, and then we put it out, obviously, when we can. So even though he announced, we still hadn't had the paperwork, right? So a verbal announcement isn't official until you actually receive the electronic. Everything is electronic now. Everything's via DocuSign documentation. So we're not allowed to publicly talk about a prospect until then. So unique story, but one in which I think we were able to get done and consistent, right? It's not like we came in at the last minute with him, and same thing with Mike Tyler, right? That's one that we were on consistently for a long time, that we're able to get done on signing day as well. And we knew about Mike a couple days prior, but that was a battle again, back and forth with LSU as well. So again, I think those relationships went out in the end.
For sure, man. And I was at Hammond for Mike's, man. Great kid, great family as well, which is certainly a trend, I think, with your class, that you and the coaches over there and Coach Beamer can be proud about the guys that y'all brought into the program that will, represent you all and represent the school and all that moving forward. So, man, that's an hour. So I know you got a lot going on, Darren. We'll let you get out of here, dude. But this has been a blast. Like I said, we appreciate you hopping on. We could probably talk ball and players and evals for hours, but we've been getting a lot of great feedback in the chat as well. So anybody who joined us late, just go back and rewind it or watch it from the beginning, it'll be on all the podcast platforms as audio as well. But Darren, like I said, man, we really appreciate it, and we'll have to do it again. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, when y'all are reaching for content in the off season, we'll go through the whole roster or something like that. We can do that for sure. But no, I appreciate y'all, man. And I just want to say thank you to everybody out there. Everyone makes a difference. All right. And even, donating to the Garnet Trust and all that stuff matters. All right. Whether it's a little bit here and there, it all matters, man. It really does all matter. And everyone matters. Like I said, I can't tell y'all enough, that atmosphere on game day is the biggest recruiting tool that we have. Okay. And again, you can't put a price tag on that. People read the stuff on social media, our recruits and their parents do. And I get so many comments from parents that say that they want to play for this university because of how the fan base gets behind this university, our football players, and how positive they are, win or lose. And I hope there's many more wins than losses, but how everyone acts in losses is just as important as the wins, because people see that stuff. Parents of future recruits see that stuff, and it matters. It matters because that's their son that's going to be playing there, and how they're treated, and how our fan base and how we treat our players is top notch. And so I thank everyone for that. And look, I think we're in a great spot, and we're literally just getting started here. And the sky's the limit for this program. And I'm just kind of blessed to just be a small piece of it.
No doubt, man. So until next time, Darren, we'll let you get out of here, dude. For Darren, I'm Wes. He's Chris. He's Darren. I'm out of things to say, so we're going to get off here. Everybody have a great weekend. Y'all have a good one. Chris and I'll be back for GC Live next week. See you.